Welcome to the Expect Success Podcast, a presentation of GeorgeBollock.com with your host, George Bollock. This podcast is for all things personal development. Don't expect success, prepare for it. Please welcome your host, George Bollock.
Welcome to Expect Success at GeorgeBollock.com. Now, in addition to listening to our podcast, you can also view the video format on YouTube at GeorgeTube.com. Shawn Achor is a New York Times bestselling author of The Happiness Advantage and Big Potential. Shawn's worked in over 50 countries with nearly half the Fortune 100 and everywhere from Camp David and Harvard to shantytowns in Zimbabwe and children's cancer wards in Boston. Shawn's TED Talk, The Happy Secret to Better Work, has over 16 million views. Happiness is not something that happens to you. Happiness is a work ethic, says Achor. It's something that requires our brains to train just like an athlete has to train. What is the biggest misconception about happiness? Well, listen to Shawn.
I think we think that happiness is something that you find. Or if you reach some level at a company or a school, then you're happier. And what we're finding is that happiness is not something that happens to you. Happiness is a work ethic. It's something that requires our brains to train just like an athlete has to train. In order to become happier, we actually have to focus our brains down on things that actually move us forward instead of getting stagnating in the things that, for example, stressing about things that are outside of our control doesn't move us forward at all. So what I think we need to be able to do is to not only change the formula for success, to help us to be able to focus upon this idea that if we prioritize happiness, it will then raise our success rates, but also a recognition that it's something that we actually have to be conscious about on a daily basis. That's something that actually requires effort, it requires training, it requires us to be able to focus our attention on this. And if we do so, I think the thing that we oftentimes think is that if people get happy, they'll stop working hard, or that happy people are unintelligent. And what we're finding is just the opposite. I think it's the most counterintuitive thing we found, which is happiness actually raises an individual's intelligence and their success rates. We find that that the happy people aren't always the smartest people. We know that I've met tons of people that are very successful and not happy, and people that are extremely intelligent and not happy. So we might assume that those two things are divorced, but now what we really realize in the science is that both of those individuals are actually underperforming what their brain is actually capable of. And if we have more role models at our companies and schools of individuals that are positive and affect other people with that positivity rippling out through those mirror neuron networks, not only can we raise the levels of happiness and engagement at our schools and companies again, but we'll actually raise their levels of success as well.
That's awesome. For more from Shawn Achor, simply search YouTube and go to his website, shantytowns.com. His bestseller, The Happiness Advantage, is available at his website and or Amazon.com. And remember, as the late, great Jim Rohn used to say, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Today you've been hanging out with Shawn Achor. Keep up the momentum. Subscribe to our newsletter so you never miss another episode. We'll catch you on the next show. And thanks a million for listening. See ya.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Expect Success Podcast with your host, George Bollock. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please rate, subscribe, and review. And find more great content online at GeorgeBollock.com and on Facebook and Twitter at George Bollock. We'll catch you next time. And remember, don't just expect success, prepare for it.